Hi, everyone, and welcome to our EdTechTeacher webinar streamed live on YouTube. Today, we're going to cover sense making in a scary world, media literacy, unit design. If you signed up for this, it was also titled Fake News Fitness. So my name is Tom Driscoll. I am the CEO of EdTechTeacher, and we have a awesome guest today, Bram Moreinis. I'll introduce him a little bit more in a second. He's going to be leading us through this workshop, and we connected a little while ago on something that we both care very passionately about, a few different shared topics. I'll let him really dive into it, but I was just floored by the work he's been doing over the years around media literacy with his students and his really nuanced and smart take on this. So I thought, what a better way than to share this with our EdTechTeacher network. So I'm going to turn it over to Bram, and let's get right into the webinar.
Thanks, Tom. Hi, everybody. I'm going to do a tour through a department store version of my work for the last 5 or 6 years. It's probably been a bit longer, which means I'm going to be going fast and we're not going to get a chance to stop and hang out very long in any one place. But we are going to have the opportunity for a 3-hour follow-up workshop, which is free for anybody who attends. And I'm hoping that Tom has that in the chat so you guys can just open that form up and be ready to use it when we're done. But welcome. Thank you so much at this very busy time of the year to join me for this little tour. So this is just a brief look at what we're going to cover today. The things that are in italic, I don't think we'll get to, but the slides are available now if you go to the little description underneath this video. So you'll be able to go and make a copy of it if you are afraid of me taking it away, or just have it there and be able to read this later on your own. I want to start with this idea of Stranger Things, which I think is this generation's Star Wars in terms of how much kids love it. And if you ask any kids about Stranger Things, you'll hear about it. And what kids are identifying with in Stranger Things is that they're trying to live their little lives. And then all of a sudden the world gets full of all these monsters and demons, and the kids have to do something about it. And they have to make sense of what's going on in the world around them. And I think that that idea that we've got scary things happening in the world that we need to make sense of and then do something about feels a lot like that Stranger Things feels. And I think that students who like Stranger Things will like media literacy when presented in this kind of a context. I think it's empowering to know that there are things you can do about it, not only learn about it, but do about it. And kids want that kind of empowerment. I like to give kids an opportunity to get stopped in their tracks every now and then and just like deal with who they are and what they're looking at. And so I want to ask you all to look at this picture and say, what do you see? And I know that Tom wants you to write stuff into the chat, but we'll be capturing that information in the form. So hopefully you were looking at this and you said to yourself, I see a sunset. But when my kids do that, I say, okay, is that what you really see? And they think about it for a second. And then some of the hands start going down. And I say, how many people here see a sunset? And is that really true? Is that really what you see? And pretty soon there's only like 1 or 2 hands up. And I go, okay, so in your model of the solar system is the Earth at the center and the sun revolves around the Earth. And then they kind of get it. And the reason I bring all this up is that I believe that our minds are junk drawers, that we have lots of different ideas and images and emotions that have been stuck in there, and we don't really integrate them. I mean, if we're graduate students, we integrate a small section of them, but there's a lot of incompatible ideas in there, and it's easy to have more stuck in, particularly if you're on social media and just having your trough of your mouth open while stuff is poured into your head. So I think we need to really focus on what we let into our minds and think about where it goes when we do bring it in. Now, those are the critical thinking skills, which an image tells me that those are the 5. I don't know if they are, but it makes sense to me. But it's this idea of instead of having a junk drawer, let's have a lots drawer that we can open and control who gets to stuff it. I then might show my students this when I'm introducing a media literacy unit, and I say, what do you think of this? Do you agree with it? Everybody agrees with it because sure. And then I say, you sure? And then a couple of them, and these are middle school students, might go, wait a minute, he looks kind of old. Is that Edison? And I say, yeah, 19th century guy. So probably not around for the internet. And now they start to get the message that they can't trust everything I show them, that I'm looking to try to poke them a little bit. And then somebody else will say, wait a minute, how could you know what 60% of internet pages are? There's more of them being made all the time. And then maybe a third will say, what's an internet page anyway? And now we're off and running. Now we're thinking about what you see is not necessarily something that you can trust. Now, fast forward to like last month when 2000 Mules hit the theaters. The guy who runs Cinemax, which is this huge theater all over the country, is a Trumper. And so he is using his own judgment to say, let's go fill theaters with people and use all these high-end images and production values to get them to feel that the election was stolen by people who stuff ballot boxes. When I show the trailer to my students, and I encourage you guys to check the trailer out, they're like, there must be something true in that. And then I show them all the articles that debunk this and talk them through the arguments as to why it's total nonsense. But it's hard to argue with something that's really well produced. Let me take a step back and tell you where I'm coming from and what fake news fitness is. And you see the picture below of the January 6th hearings, January 6th event that's going on. And I don't know what's a whole lot scarier than that. I started it when Trump was getting elected and doing all of his manipulation by putting lies out that people would believe. And that really horrified me. And I felt as an educator, I needed to try to do something about it. And I thought that high school would be the right place because you can't control what all the colleges show. But if I could get enough other teachers like me doing media literacy units that would get students to not fall for things like this, maybe it would make a difference. So then I was exposed to what you guys were exposed to, if you're old enough, which you all are, the Obama inauguration on the left to the Trump inauguration on the right. Sean Spicer saying that the Trump inauguration was the largest attended in history. And then Kellyanne Conway following up by saying, well, there are alternative facts here. And what happened? Like, who went along with that? Did people do what we call in professional wrestling kayfabe, where they said, well, I know it's really not more, but I'm going to pretend it's more just because I want to be on Team Trump? The problem with kayfabe, which says, never tell anybody that wrestling is fake. Sometimes you start to believe it yourself. And now we have QAnon, which may have started as kayfabe, but now, if Trump goes and calls somebody to show up with trucks in Ottawa or to circle the Capitol or to bring a lot of guns somewhere, they're going to go and do it. You fall into the pit of conspiracy groups, far-right groups go into those groups. I'm talking about groups on Facebook and other social media areas, and then you become an army. And this risk of civil war from this army, to me, is very, very real right now. But let me calm things down a bit. So after deciding I wanted to do something about this, I started researching, how can you tell fake news from real news? What skills and knowledge do we need to give to students so that they can make a difference? NAMLY is a really, really great organization. I've been following them a lot lately. CRAP, C-R-A-A-P, was the first one I really hit on. First Draft is doing incredible work, and you could spend hours and hours and hours. You could spend days on their website. So definitely hit NAMLY, hit First Draft. And then how to spot fake news, that's the Library Association. But anyhow, so was it just a matter of teaching students to go through some kind of a checklist when they saw something that they thought might not be true? Now, Mike Caulfield, who might be on the call now, came up with this much more simpler version of what to do based on what fact checkers actually do. And it's 4 things. Stop, which I would call shifting into system 2, which is Daniel Kahneman's version of critical thinking, instead of just reacting with your implicit biases and things. Investigate where the thing is coming from, like who made this. Find better coverage. If there's an idea that you think might be interesting, did somebody else also say that? Somebody might be more trustworthy. And then this last one, claims, evidence, and reasoning tracking, which is hard at the middle school level, but definitely worth trying to teach kids to do at the high school level. Now, civic online reasoning, and I like the word civic in there, boils it down to 3. They just leave stop out, but it's the same idea. And I think that little piece, How can we figure out who made the information? What's the claimed evidence and reasoning? And what do other sources say, which Mike calls lateral searching? Those are really core stuff. And I work with those in my fake news tool, which I'll tell you about in a second. But I also put all of this in a larger context, the context of activating students to be aware of the world and current events and what's happening with constructivism and social learning and experiential learning and game-based learning, all those things which I feel give meaning to this question of we should learn how to deal with possibly wrong information that comes our way. So I went to the MisinfoCon at MIT after I'd been thinking about this a little bit more. This is in 2016. And I made this little create-a-cour slide for them that everybody would automatically have agreed with there anyhow. But really the focus is getting the students to care, getting them to learn how to assess, and then getting them to talk about and be active civic citizens wanting to make a difference, which is what ties to this sort of Stranger Things modus operandi. We want to save the world even though we're kids. The two pieces of what I came up with was that there would be a web form that would pop up in the browser. That's a very, very old version of it. And it would pull information from the page. There had already been other projects where you would give kids a worksheet where they'd go and write things that they saw on the page. Or there would be an online form that was a different tab, but you'd have to write everything. And knowing a little JavaScript, because I was a web developer at the time, I still am a little bit, I realized that we don't have to have the kids spending all this time on the stuff that's already there. We can have them focus on making evaluative judgments and noticing things. And that's what they should be spending their time writing. They can just look at the other information that's right in front of them. So I'm going to be giving you a tour of the later version of this browser in a bit. The other bit is the idea that we want to put it in a context to give it meaning, and that's approaches for designing units. And I feel like the units really belong in as paired with a content area investigation. So, you're teaching social studies. We're looking at, Shelby versus Holder decision. Let's go and use that as our focus, rather than just some general purpose. Let's find a list of, fake articles and talk about them. So I wrote some lessons back then. These are some of the ones that I wrote. And I found a couple of pilot teachers, a civics teacher and a science teacher. And the students did investigations. What you're looking at here is an old Drupal site. We don't do it that way anymore, but they would post their investigations to the site, and then others would look at the investigations and comment on them. And we'd have a stream back and forth of the commenting, which is part of the social learning that I think is so critical to make this happen. Students will look at each other's work and care about it if they know that they have to comment on it and that the comments have to be substantive. Teaching students to do substantive commenting is a piece of this. The teachers have to go and find the articles that we're going to look at, true articles and false articles, which means you have to pick a topic that is polarized, something where you can find either stuff on the right or stuff on the left. I'm going to just, in case you haven't noticed, I'm on the left side of things and feel that we don't want to have that false equivalence of, well, if 99 people say one thing and one person says the other thing, it's 50-50. But that said, if you find something polarized, you can find a lot of articles that are trying to push both sides and have a lot of fodder for discussion. So these are just two lists that you'll be able to click on and get to from the slideshow if you cared about. How does this look now? I'm calling this FNF 2.0 because I actually met Tom Driscoll through the Digital Literacy Accelerator, where we were paid some money to go and remake our work, about 10 other people across the country. And one of them did a game that I really liked called Boom Boom Boom, Agents of Influence. Check that out. So the new version of the form has 3 modes. The surface mode, which is what I call trust and mistrust markers, judging a book by its cover. That's the one that students have the easiest access to because they already do that and they already have a lot of ideas in their head about what to trust and what not. Some good ideas, some not. But of course, you can't totally judge a book by its cover. So then we have to do the lateral searching, which I call thoughtful, where I say, okay, did this writer ever write other stuff about this topic? Is this publication known for having expertise? And should we trust what this publication says and what's its bias? And then the third level, which I call detailed, and that's claim evidence reasoning. That's where you actually have to read the text in detail and even read the evidence behind it. In the surface one, you don't have to read it all, so the kids are easy about that. So here's what the form looks like if you're looking at a surface article. And as you can see, as with the first version, it pulls these things right out. But then students have to give it a trust rank and say, well, what markers did we see that lead us to decide to trust it or not? Actually, we are right now looking in detailed mode because we wouldn't see CER links in the early version. And kids can look at a thing like this and say, well, you know, pop-up video, probably not a good sign. Pop-up ads, probably not a good sign. These pictures don't look very well produced, probably not a good sign. They've heard a little bit about Fox News. And this whole idea that you shouldn't force kids to wear masks was a current event. Like, we were in school and this issue was going on, which means I had a lot of connection with the students around these questions because we were all forced to wear masks in the school that I was in. And some of us thought it was a good idea. So I think that bringing current events into study is really an important part of how we do this. Daily Caller turns out to be a landing page from Facebook. There's a fellow named Judd Legume that does something called Popular Information, popularinfo.org. I mean, popular.info, I think. Yeah, anyway, please check that out because the interplay between these sites that have ads, obviously, this is trying to get mothers who are concerned about their children getting sick to go buy clothes. You know, there's a whole ecosystem between them and Facebook. But kids can see that this is not a place to trust. I can show them this site and they can say why they should trust it, again, without reading it, just looking at the trust, mistrust markers in this site as well. So I have the kids come up with a set of markers. They write them on an assignment, and we then build a shared conceptual list of all of them together. These are my translations of the ones that the students come up with. And again, you know, you can't trust this that far, but you can give the kids a sense of agency, of having some power to be able to do these things. I think it's a good place to start, even though people will argue that you shouldn't go to trust, mistrust markers anymore because you can't trust whether something looks good or not. Now, the next level is the thoughtful, where we do lateral searching. We're looking at other sites. I'll tell you a tiny little story about how we got to this point. We were studying Sean Spicer's lies, and somebody said, well, maybe the current secretary lies. And I did a Google search, the Jen Psaki lie, and we found this article on the Federalist and did a whole investigation of gas prices. But it was really interesting to see how the Federalist writes. Because we're doing lateral searching, we could go to Media Bias Fact Check site, and they could say, if you read the bottom, that there's a lot of propaganda and conspiracy theories and failed fact checks. And yeah, you don't really want to trust these folks. We also saw that the author of this article hasn't written anything else about gas or prices or energy, and that therefore he's probably not somebody we want to trust too far. Now, the third level, claims, evidence, and reasoning. I teach the students what a lead is. I have them pull a claim out of the article, because you have to be able to say, I'm going to evaluate a particular claim at this level. You can't just say the whole article is true or not. The plugin automatically pulls all the links out of the article, but then you make the ones go away that don't relate to the claim that you want. You summarize the evidence that's given, and then you summarize the reasoning that's given, and then you say, what validity rank do I want to give to this, and why? And you leave questions for later, because we're going to make this a Google Doc or a Office doc that allows commenting, so that students can then go onto those documents and comment on each other and get graded for the substantiveness of their comments. So we're going from individual work to social learning group work. This is the website, docs.fakenewsfitness.org. I didn't mean to go there because I clicked on the picture. One really good example of claim evidence reasoning is this guy, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and his campaign to have people not get vaccinated because they cause autism. And of course, those of us who are following this know that that's not a valid claim anymore, and never was really. But he says, the reason why you're not seeing Andrew Wakefield's study in the Lancet being promoted anymore is that big pharma gets rich from the vaccines, and so they pay the government to hide this information, and that you parents are going to disable your kids, so don't vaccinate them. And that actually does work to a lot of people. But if I do one of the claim evidence reasoning investigations on this one, what I see is the lead paragraph, the focus claim summary, the evidence links. One of them is going to Pinterest, which is always a reason to not trust something. And then I say, well, it's got bad evidence because the study was redacted. The CDC did many studies that show that mercury isn't harmful. And then I put a question for later that students could go and follow up on. And again, I'm being a student following this. Of course, not very many students can write like this, but I'm giving examples for adults. You'll find this in the slides so you can read it and get a better taste of it. We have a little bit of time left. I'm going to invite you guys to do a Q&A with me after, if you'd like to stick around and talk about this. I don't know that Tom's going to be able to keep this webinar on YouTube open for that. So please put your email address in the chat if you want to stick around for the Q&A. And then what I'm going to then do is just invite you to a Google Meet. So it'll be about a 5-minute lag time between that. So please go and in the chat, put your email address if you want to stick around from 5 to 5:30 or 5 to 5:15 and talk some more. But since I have a little more time, I only showed you half of the slides that I wanted to show you. So I'm going to show you a few more. One of the things that I like is this concept of DIKW, which is a sort of model of sense making that says you've got some data in front of you. Don't know what it means. Then maybe there's a message and you can decode that message. You have some literacy enough to know, this is English and I read English. That's now information. Before it was information, it was just raw data. Now, I then connect that message that's given to me to what I already know and maybe to other things that I can look up. And now I get to a place of knowledge. So my data might be, here's a bunch of pictures of people skulking around stuffing ballots in boxes. The information might be, okay, the person in this movie is claiming that this is how Trump got taken out of office, was by liberals doing this. And then the knowledge is, well, I'm going to go and look at his claims. I'm going to check them out. And I'm going to say, I don't really buy it. Now, wisdom, that last piece is, what am I going to do about this? Now, as a teacher, what I'm going to do about that is I'm going to talk to my students about it, because I want people to not show up in that movie theater and go along with that crazy stuff. And you can see how claim evidence reasoning fits very nicely into that whole thing I'm talking about. And the kids get shocked when they see that the trailer. So this is like a case study that we do. You're looking at a lot of different aspects of things. So DIKW, what do I see? What does it mean? What can I know? What will I decide? How that maps into the tool that I made is that the data is just trust, mistrust markers. You're not actually reading the article yet. You're just saying, what's my instinct here? Because we want them to be triggered to wonder. And I think the things that trigger us to stop and think about things are those markers, even though we don't use them to make a determination. We have an explicit message. Maybe there's some implicit messages going on as well, the bias, the other articles that are on the site. We, for knowledge, do lateral searching. We do claim evidence and reasoning. And then we decide, am I going to share this? Am I going to not do anything? Am I going to do something against what I'm seeing? Now, bringing in one of my favorite resources that I use all the time, which is the News Literacy Project. They have a lot of great material on how to recognize fabricated data, false claims, bad logic. It's a sort of online e-learning. So you can run it as a class if the teacher runs it and then talks to the students, which is how I like to do it. I like to not do student alone stuff, but then there's a lot of student alone sort of assessments that you do after you've done the main lesson with everybody else. It generates numbers that you can look at to say how well your kids are getting it. So it's free, newslit.org. I think that's it. Yeah, the News Literacy Project. Please use that. So you all remember when, maybe you do, the QAnon folks went to Canada in trucks to protest vaccine requirements going across the border. And a lot of folks showed up in Canada with Confederate flags, which was a bit of a tell that this was a bit astroturfed. I'm going to play this for you, and I hope that the sound comes through.
Oh, come on through. Come on through. What is happening here? Wow, what is this lady doing? Trampling. Trampling horses. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Look. Oh my God. They just trampled this lady.
Now, if you're really savvy, it might have occurred to you that the video that was taken with the background sound had an overlay of a narrator who wasn't actually there taking the video. And he's got a message for us that the people are being trampled by horses, by the cops who are trying to break up an encampment over in Ottawa. So that's the claim. The evidence is the video and the voiceover. And the reasoning is that, well, the police were trying to break up the protesters. It's a horrible thing to do if you're a policeman to do something like that. And that one woman died. And so we have to go and fight against the police in Ottawa to allow our encampment to continue. I'm a bit of an information nerd, so I looked at all the people involved in the Twitter exchange that I started pulling this stuff out of, how it ended up in the Toronto Sun, and where this all ended up. And it turns out that follow-ups to that Twitter post used a lot of videos from other actual evidence of police brutality to get people really fired up. I mean, if you found this article on Twitter and you were at all not aware of what was going on, you would get really furious with the top cops in Ottawa. But the counterclaim that I can support is that no protesters were trampled because there were no records of any injuries at any local hospitals, and that trained horses don't step on people, particularly horses trained by cops. My belief is that the protesters knew the horses wouldn't trample them and lay down to generate this footage, or maybe they tripped and we got this footage and an opportunist used it for misinformation. But in any event, this isn't what we thought it was. So my first approach was using case studies and current events. My second approach that I'm going to share with the little bit of time we have left, I'm just going to zoom through. I like to use different kinds of learning modalities, explicit, constructivist, game-based, and sort of alternate with explicit teaching. If you go to the website, you'll see there's a lot of strategies that I've explored, materials that I'm recommending, and then under F&F units, you'll see the lessons associated with the new plugins. I want to put another push for civic online reasoning because they have so many resources and lessons of just about any kind you would possibly imagine. It's a great resource. Some links I've taken. This is a database that I built of all the stuff I've been finding. It's in Airtable, which is a really wonderful thing. But anyhow, we only have 2 minutes left. So please put your email in the chat if you want to talk a little bit more. And if you are interested in signing up for that 3-hour free workshop, Tom is going to put, let's see, you going to put or am I going to put? There's a little link. Yeah, there it is. But I think that that's as far as I can cover in 30 minutes. I'm glad I made it this well. Okay.
All right. Yeah, thank you so much, Bram. That was fantastic. A lot of great material there. They covered within 30 minutes. So bravo to you for covering that much. I thought it was an excellent webinar. A lot of great things to work with. If you are watching this live or if you are watching the archive, the resources, all of the slides are in the description. So take a look at the description of this video and your slides deck is there. I'm also going to put in the chat, if you would like to schedule a follow-up webinar with Bram, the bit.ly link is in the comments, right? And that will remain there. So even if, say, you're watching the archive of this and you'd like to jump in, you can do that. Otherwise, we will wrap this up. Again, thank you guys for joining. And please reach out anytime if you'd like to learn more about media literacy, some of the resources and tools that Bram has created, and especially if you'd like to work with us moving forward. So if you're interested in EdTechTeacher webinars or summer events, or even having us come and work with your school, reach out anytime. So again, my name is Tom Driscoll, CEO of EdTechTeacher. Bram Moreinis is a contributor to EdTechTeacher as well, so feel free to reach out anytime. All right,
Tom, before you close it, if it's possible for you to get me all the emails that have shown up in the comments, if any have, I'll be able to put them into our meet and do the Q&A.
All right, sounds good. All right, thanks, Bram.
Thank you, everybody.
Yep, take care.